Hello everyone, thank you for clicking on my channel. Welcome to the journey home. My name is Catherine and I live in Nova Scotia. This will be the last segment I read on courageous dreaming. How Shamans Dreamed the World into Being by Alberto Villaldo, PhD. After this, I'm very excited to announce that we are going to go into transurfing. I will be reading captions from a book on the practical course of creating your own reality through transurfing. It explains a lot about, I was interested in this because of the talks that I was hearing about how pendulums work. Fascinating stuff. I can't wait to share with you. So this last segment I'm reading to you is about, it's called Be Ready to Die at Any Moment. Cato the Censor wrote, "He who fears death has already lost the life he covets." The Earth Keepers believe that to live fully and dream courageously, we must wake up each morning and live this day as if it were our last. Only when we face the reality that we are mortal and that we have no control over when we depart from this physical existence do we find the courage to stop frantically running away from the death we fear and put our energy into living the lives of originality and purpose. To be ready to die at any moment requires great valor. We need the emotional courage to speak the truth now, to say to others what needs to be said without delay. It's all too easy to tell ourselves, "Well, she knows I love her. I don't have to say it out loud." Or, "He knows I feel bad about our argument, but I'll clear the air later." We need moral courage so that we can align our behavior with our principles instead of making excuses for why it's all right to get back to acting from integrity later on, at a moment that is more convenient in time. With moral courage, we don't look at the mess we have made or inherited but done nothing about and say, "Let someone else figure out how to fix that problem." This brings to mind Thomas Jefferson, who said before he died that he regretted that the founding fathers hadn't figured out how to solve the problem of slavery, which would now have to be addressed by future generations. We're still dealing with the fallout of generations of Americans who passed that problem along through Jim Crow laws, housing discrimination, and the like. With moral courage, we can be honest about what we're doing today that will shock our great-grandchildren, the way we're shocked by the fact that our forefathers owned slaves, hunted species to extinction for the sport of it, and denied women the right to vote. Being ready to die at any moment also requires the intellectual courage to let go of the old notions we inherited from our family, church, and culture about what we need to be happy. It means asking ourselves difficult questions such as, would I be content if I never got married or had kids? Or if I never got to travel around the world? What if I follow my calling, but the consequence is that the one I love leaves me? Intellectual courage also means daring to change our minds about someone or something that we may take absolutely for granted. For example, it took great intellectual courage for Christopher Columbus to think that the world was not flat, as everyone else believed, and then followed his convictions. Many of us today continue to live in a flat world, with ideas and opinions that serve us well but limit our experience of reality. Having the hummingbird courage to dream means following your calling today, in some way, despite the facts in your life that seem to be unmovable obstacles. It means not waiting until you've gathered all the materials, the financial nest egg, the wide open blocks of time, and the understanding and support of those you care about to begin dreaming. If your canvas is unfinished at the moment you die, at least you'll have died an artist instead of a daydreamer or dabbler who talks about how she'd truly like to live but only does so at odd moments here and there, such as when she's at a weekend retreat, momentarily inspired or on vacation. We procrastinate living the way we truly want because we think that we have all the time in the world for our dreaming to begin. To that end, one of my closest friends made all sorts of plans for after he retired, working at a job he hated until he finally reached age 65 and could stop going to the office. 2 months after this happened, he was dead, and his postponed dreams remained unfulfilled fantasies. His children seem to have learned well from him, though, as they're using their small inheritance to travel around the world. Remaining aware that death can come storming through our door at any time frees us from the type of death of the spirit that occurs when we put our dreaming ability on ice and simply slog through another day, hoping our lives will change for the better. The lifelessness that occurs when we're trapped in the nightmare is far worse than the one that occurs when we pass from this mortal existence into the next one. Yet in our culture, we're oblivious to this death of the spirit because we're terrified of the death of the body. Fearing the end of our days, we try to stay frantically busy and keep it at bay. The illusion of outwitting death. Once upon a time, in a Baghdad marketplace, there was a servant who bumped into death himself. Terrified, the man dropped his purchases and ran home on foot. When he arrived, he breathlessly begged his master, "Please, may I borrow your fastest horse? I met Death in the marketplace, and he gestured like he was about to take me. So I ran back here as fast as I could. I must escape from him." The master said, "Take my fastest steed, and perhaps you can outrun Death tonight. Flee to Samara, for he will never find you there." The servant thanked him profusely and galloped off at breakneck speed toward the village of Samara, which was many hours away. The master then went to the marketplace, and when he saw Death, he asked, "Why did you threaten my poor servant when he was here earlier today?" Death replied, "I wasn't threatening him. I was just shocked to see him, that's all. You see, I was expecting to meet up with him tonight in Samara." Like the frightened servant, we desperately try to outrun our demise and deny its inevitability. We keep ourselves very busy with an endless agenda of important tasks, reasoning that if we leave enough items pending, the end won't find us and interrupt our very significant work. "My company could never survive without me," we say, or "everything would fall apart in this family if I weren't on top of it all." We can't bear to go to the corner to mail a letter without our cell phone in hand. If we're not available to other people every second of the day, we'd have to admit that the earth will indeed continue to rotate without us. Fear of our death causes us to rush about here and there doing whatever we can to outwit it, only to feel trapped in our senseless existence. As Socrates said, "Beware the barrenness of a busy life." What we say are priorities don't even get penciled in on our to-do list. That quality time with our child or night out with our partner keeps getting postponed because we have to finish a report or go to the hardware store. Often, our justification for not dreaming is that we don't have enough time, money, or resources. These excuses are rooted in our fears at serpent and our stories at jaguar. What we really lack is not resources, but the courage to say no to the nightmare and fears and tell the dream yes. This brings to mind my mother. When she turned 82, she told me that if she were younger, she would have wanted to try bungee jumping, which sounded like a wonderful adventure to her. I told her that there was a safer version of the sport she could try even at her age called a zip line, involving a strong cable and a harness. My octogenarian mother was absolutely thrilled to be sent careening off a mountainside in Utah. Yet how often do most of us refuse to take risks in life, even when we're young, because of our niggling fears? We don't have to go into free fall with no cord attached, but we can jump into fully relishing life instead of trying to tiptoe in safety at all times. This makes me think of whenever one of my workshop participants comes to me and exclaims, "I'm so glad I came. I've been reading your books and been meaning to do this for years. I always wonder what other life adventures they've been avoiding if they've taken years to muster the courage to step out of their comfort zone and begin their healing journey." You may also be putting off living the way you'd like to live, becoming caught up in your everyday activities and your excuses for why you can't have the life you want. In the following exercise, you'll start imagining how you might take your dream, make it manifest today, regardless of the obstacles you imagine. Exercise your perfect day. What happens the moment you wake up in the morning? Do you leap out of bed to immediately start the day? If so, stay in bed a little longer next time to recall your dreams. Then, in that state of lucid reverie, visualize your perfect day. Imagine the people you interact with and the quality of your conversations. Hear yourself speaking truths that need to be spoken, as well as saying, "I love you, I forgive you, and I'm sorry" to those you've been meaning to make amends to. See what you eat, where you are, and what happens before you fall asleep at night. Picture every detail. Now ask yourself what you can do before this evening ends to experience every element of that perfect day, from the emotions you feel to the interactions and adventures you have. How can you bring the tropical beach into your world when it's bitterly cold outside? How can you play in the waves when you have to make dinner and return 24 emails? Where is the relaxation, the whimsy and delight, and the communion with nature in your world right now? Reject the notion that you have the rest of your life to plan and create this perfect day. Free yourself from the karmic baggage that's causing you to say you can't have the interactions and relationships you desire. The stuff that makes you feel that you can't risk getting hurt again, or that you just don't have it in you to tolerate the ridicule you'd get if you were to step out and do what you really want. And get rid of the excuse that you don't have the money to fund your dream. And resources will flow in from unexpected sources once you set your intent in motion. Discover the elements of your dream. What are symbols of your dream that are symbols of what you most love and value? And know that you can bring them into your life right now. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Perhaps your perfect day takes place in Italy, where you're able to savor the experience of spending a lovely afternoon sitting on a veranda somewhere, drinking a fine wine and enjoying the lush gardens before your eyes. At Hummingbird, you understand that you'll find a way to get there, literally or figuratively. You'll recognize that there will be cascading flowers, delights for the senses, and the exquisite luxury of time to enjoy it all, be it in Tuscany or in Toledo. On the other hand, if you keep rushing out there, here and there, trying to scrape together enough cash to take your dream vacation, you may end up in Italy, but you'll be disappointed. You'll find that the villa doesn't have wireless internet capability. The wine is great, but twice as expensive compared to what you can get at home. And the fantasy of the country reawakening your sensuality isn't coming to life like it does in one of those E.M. Forster novels. You'll decide that Italy is the problem, not your unwillingness to let go of your frenetic activity and surrender to the experience of sensual reawakening wherever you are in the world, regardless of what the facts of your life are. You won't truly live because you'll be too busy trying not to die. Understand which death you truly fear. We think that we're afraid of death, but what we're really terrified of is the end of the ego, the self that we've come to know and love. Fearing that demise, we try to outrun it like the Baghdad servant did. Again, we do this by staying busy and pretending that we're too important to have our life plans interrupted. What we need to do instead is let go of our personal importance, of that self that has a particular set of memories, personality, and temperament that defines who we are, and identify with the soul that transcends death. The courage to be ready to die at any moment comes from the understanding that the self with personality, temperament, and memories, the ego self, is not your only self. You have an immortal self, and identifying with that rather than the ego takes tremendous courage. The more you identify with the soul and reside in hummingbird awareness, the easier it is to let go of your stories and shed the karma you've been carrying with you from lifetime to lifetime. You'll become lighter and more easily enter eagle consciousness, where I no longer exists as a separate entity. Eagle begins to feel like home because it is home. When we stop identifying with our personality, let go of our karma, and go home to the realm of the eagle, we cease fearing the death of the physical body and the end of our life on earth. Knowing our immortal nature, we can remain immersed in the great ocean of infinity, or be born again in human form for the purpose of learning or serving. Then we can become avatars, higher beings who deliberately come down into the earthly plane. Having transcended the soul itself, we will have attained the consciousness of the stars. As avatars, we will have complete freedom to dream at a much higher level than that of the personal soul, and we can partake in the dreams of stars or even entire galaxies. We can attain eagle consciousness in an instant, but it can take many lifetimes to get to that moment. The closest some of us will come is when we experience selfless love. Here we taste infinity and use this new awareness to alleviate our fears of the unknown that await us after mortal death. Freed from this paralyzing fear of the ego's demise, we can participate in dreaming in a world that benefits all in this lifetime, not just ourselves. I remember experiencing selfless love while holding my newborn son for the first time. For an instant or a lifetime, I disappeared, and all that existed was this child of life itself. As I dwelled in eagle consciousness, it was clear to me that I always resided there and did not need an outside stimulus, like my son's birth, to remind me how to get back home. Once you've experienced eagle, you'll never see things the same again. You'll be conscious of the fact that someone else will walk on the earth after you, and that your actions will impact future generations. One of my clients, for instance, lives in an area where there's too much water in the sewer system. The sewers will drain into the lake that's the water source for millions of people. He's careful to conserve water on rainy days, and he saves his laundry and car washing for times when using lots of water won't contribute to the population of the lake that he shares with his neighbors. He does all of this without any need to draw attention to his act or dub himself the noble rescuer of the lake or good citizen. He nurtures the lake just as he nurtures himself, because he understands that there is no man and lake. There is only spirit expressing itself in the forms of man and lake. Having experienced eagle awareness, you can bring that wisdom back to the lower levels of perception and apply it to your daily life. Any sense of lack or of longing for something that remains out of reach will disappear. You'll be aware that your own river is part of a much greater one of infinity, which always flows pure and clean. And you'll decide that's the only water you want to drink from. Sparkling and clear, fertile and abundant with fish and reeds, your inner river will be flowing with plenty, nourishing the world. Detaching from your roles. For most of us, our self-definition is so important that we cling to our labels and roles and never explore how we can redefine ourselves. Our roles are our ego. Without them, we feel that we'll be losing the essence of who we are and dying. In the following exercise, you'll incinerate your roles so that you can let go of their limitations. Afterwards, you'll discover the possibility of those roles without having to get stuck in the story you created around them. Your roles then become what you do instead of who you are. You can stop identifying with these roles at the level of jaguar or mind and discover their myriad possibilities at hummingbird, where any role can be discarded or transformed at any time because you're no longer identified with them. You wait, Chloe. Go lay down. She'll be okay, guys. Promise. We're almost done. I think we're almost done. Yes. Exercise. The exercise, burning your rolls. To perform this exercise, you'll need some twigs, several slips or strips of paper, a pen, a fire, and your soul's courage. Gaze into the flames, which could be a fireplace, barbecue, fire pit, letting your thoughts slow down and fade in intensity. Cease to give them weight and watch as they begin to dissipate. Fire has a mysterious ability of helping you enter the state of lucid reverie and access the dream time. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to spend hours by the fire without thinking or talking? On each strip of paper, write a role, label, or self-definition that you identify with. Be sure to include husband, wife, a father, mother, doctor, breadwinner, nurse, recovering alcoholic, student, lover, and so on. All of these roles, no matter how exalted, have bound you and kept you stuck in an uninspired nightmare. Nevertheless, wrap each strip around a twig and thank each role for the lessons it has taught you and the powers it's bestowed upon you. Bless each roll and then place the twig in the fire and watch it burn. Continue this process with all of your roles and know that you're creating a sacred ritual for yourself without engaging the mind. Feel the heat as each twig burns, making sure that you work from the level of hummingbird, of poetry and myth. Imagine the demands of your roles disappearing into smoke and ash as you're freed from playing the part of mother, spouse, son, employee, and open your heart to receive the gifts that each of these roles present to you. Just want to say here, guys, too, if you have not seen the previous videos on the 4 levels of perception, which is the hummingbird, jaguar, snake, and eagle, you'll find them. I'll put them in the playlist. I think it was the video on courageous dreaming that I did just before this one. Know that you cannot be defined by your roles, but you can perform them all with beauty and grace. I apologize for my dog interrupting. Practice forgiveness and atonement. Not identifying with your roles allows you to clean up your river and be ready to die at any instant. Liberating yourself from the labels of victim, provider, single mom, and so on allows you to forgive others, absolve yourself for your actions, and atone. So often people will take great pride in announcing that they've forgiven their mothers for being cold and unloving, or their fathers for being too demanding, but they would never ask their parents to forgive them for their actions. Whenever my clients tell me that they've finally been able to forgive one of their parents, I ask them to go to that parent immediately and ask forgiveness for the hard time they've put their mother or father through. Only then do they sever the energetic cords that keep them bound to that person and that story. As hard as it is to say, I forgive you, when you've been wronged, it's harder to say, I'm sorry. I hope you'll forgive me. Remember, forgiveness is not about blame and stories. It's about dropping the story in favor of the dream of loving and living in peace. You can forgive your ex-husband and choose to have no relationship with him, for instance, but you also have to be willing to give up the story you create in your mind every time you let yourself think about how he wronged you and you suffered. You bring that relationship back to life each time you play the movie in your head and recreate your anger, resentment, and sadness. Today is the perfect day for letting go of that story, forgiving once and for all, and leaving your karmic baggage behind. Forgive me, guys. All right, Chloe Bird. You win. Asking for forgiveness is a very difficult task because you open yourself up to getting drawn into another person's drama. Your former spouse's story of being the wronged lover may have a payoff for him, so he may not be willing to relinquish the victim role simply because you'd like to dream something more empowering. When you ask for forgiveness unconditionally, Keeping in mind that the other person's choice not to participate in a new dream has nothing to do with you. You can find the courage to say, I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings and disappointed you, regardless of whether he or she chooses to reciprocate. It may be enormously difficult for you to let go of your desire to be told, I forgive you. What's more, you might have difficulty forgiving yourself. At Hummingbird, you'll remember that, like everyone else, you're on a journey of spiritual discovery and will make mistakes along the way. Western psychology tells us that in order to heal our emotional hurts, we must forgive those who wronged us and be forgiven by those whom we have wronged. The problem with this strategy is that it keeps us locked into the stories of victims, rescuers, and perpetrators. That's why it's important to let go of any judgment and forgive all who are involved before making amends. That way, you let yourself off the hook for having authored such an unimaginative story. You excuse yourself for thinking, how could I have married that idiot? Or why did I loan my daughter the car that night she got in her accident? Then you say you're sorry and make amends with life. You atone. After all, your real debt is with the universe. One way to atone is by helping someone else in need. When you do, your stories are no longer personal stories and your debts are no longer personal debts. You see how your actions harmed everyone and you spot opportunities to help others and make up for your transgressions against life itself. One evening in San Francisco, a friend and I were walking to our car, which was parked a few blocks away. We were approaching a homeless woman who was asleep under some pieces of cardboard when we saw a fellow several steps ahead of us place a bill in the woman's cup. A few seconds later, we saw two teenagers come and steal the money from the sleeping woman. I thought of giving chase to the kids, but my companion took me by the arm and we placed a $10 bill inside the woman's jacket pocket instead. That evening, my friend paid back a debt to life and taught me a great lesson about giving freely to others. When you sacrifice for another, the universe will observe your quiet act of atonement. You'll feel the weight of your guilt beginning to lift because while saying I'm sorry feels good, actually making up for your harmful actions feels even better. Yet true atonement must be done anonymously. As Jesus said, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Matthew 6, 1-4. In other words, as soon as you start thinking and talking about what noble act you've committed, it starts serving your ego's story. Remain instead at a higher level of awareness, dreaming a world in which you don't need validation because experiencing forgiveness and love are enough. Prepare for your departure tonight. When you begin to identify with your soul and experience your connection to spirit in all its many expressions, you'll find rising within you the courage to live as if you're ready to die at any moment. You won't be embarrassed, ashamed, or intimidated as you boldly act in alignment with your deepest held values. Your life will naturally unfold according to your intent, and with love, you'll say hello and goodbye to the people who come and go in your life. You'll be confident that even if those you care about won't participate at first in your new dream, you won't be alone. You'll feel certain that dreaming partners will appear and join you in co-creating a new reality, and they will. In the following exercise, you'll indulge in speculating about how that new reality might unfold. By doing so, you'll open yourself up to the ingenious and magical ways that the universe employs to help you manifest your dream. The exercise. Write your eulogy. It can be difficult to tell the story of what's happening in your life right now, or of how you experienced a significant event without using the characters of victim, rescuer, bully. But by now you know it's crucial to do so if you want to break out of the nightmare. Now it's time to tell your entire heroic story from the perspective of Hummingbird. What has been your journey from the moment you were born until today? Write the story as if you just died and this is the eulogy to be delivered at your funeral. What memories of your life would you want the people you love to hold on to? Think about what you discovered and what you experienced, the events of your existence that help define who you are, but also remember the small moments that capture the image of you living the way you intended to. How did you touch others? What love did you find? And what love did you bring to the world? What were your adventures? What did you explore? And what did you learn? What did you create? What did you enjoy? In times of change, challenge, loss, and tragedy, how did you practice beauty? What did you achieve? Keep in mind that you are the storyteller, so you can frame the facts any way you choose. It doesn't matter that what eulogy someone else might write for you. Tell the story the way you wish it to be, capturing the essence of who you are. If you're not happy with the dream you've lived, go back and rewrite it. Remember to describe the gifts and powers you acquired as a result of the disappointments and tragedies in your life, and to frame your story as a hero's journey. Jot down your initiations, your rebirths and reinventions, and your triumphs. If you find yourself writing the eulogy that you wish were true today, but you haven't yet made amends for what you've done, by all means, do so right away. When you've finished, draw upon your emotional courage and read your eulogy aloud to your parents, spouse, and children. By sharing what you've written, you're letting those you care most about know what is most important to you. This practice establishes your intent with others, and they can begin to support you in the kind of life journey they now know you'd like to dream into being. Cultivate gratitude. Being ready to die at any instant allows us to live fully and dream courageously, but it also has the hidden gift of nurturing the seeds of gratitude within us. When we stop rushing around, keeping ourselves busy and distracted, we start finding that we have the time to look at the larger picture of our lives and acknowledge our blessings. After being felled by a stomach flu, for instance, we often awaken the next morning with a deep appreciation for a simple piece of toast. Good heavens, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. We're right at the end and I forgot to power off. That won't happen again. After being felled by a stomach flu, for instance, we often awaken to the next morning with a deep appreciation for a simple piece of toast and our ability to sit comfortably on a chair. After experiencing a brush with death or hearing about a sudden tragedy, an earthquake, a bridge collapse, a fatal car wreck, we look at our partner or children or best friends and think, how lucky I am to have them in my life. I ought to spend some more time with them and tell them how much I care about them. Gratitude, the feeling that we're blessed, helps us to stop being enslaved, to do our to-do lists, and remember why we came here: to love, to learn, to grow, to discover what we can do to participate in the unfolding work of art called creation. Feeling deep gratitude reminds us of what we most value and inspires us to stop procrastinating, awaken from the nightmare of frenetic but meaningless activity, and start truly living the way we want to live, with boldness and originality. That was an incredible book. An incredible book. We have the potential to dream sacred, courageous dreams. In the afterword of this book, he writes, to dream a sacred and courageous dream, one that goes beyond serving our personal desires and brings beauty to the world. Together we acknowledge our own contribution to the dream without being overly impressed by ourselves for being a part of the greater dream holds so much more meaning. We savor the experience of dreaming in partnership with others, the people we love, the people we know only by sight, and the people we'll never have a chance to meet. We encourage them to join us in dreaming. In Inca, Hopi, Tibetan, and Mayan, and other Aboriginal societies throughout the world, the elders carry the tradition of gathering around a fire when the moon is full and dreaming of a world that they'd want their children's children to inherit. On that evening, they quietly arrive in the circle of dreamers, knowing that while what they have to offer is just a tiny piece of a larger puzzle, it's important that they show up with love and intent and participate in the dreaming process. At Serpent, they know they need to sit by the fire. At Jaguar, they realize they must bring with them their love and curiosity. At Hummingbird, they offer their contribution without comprehending how it fits in the collective dream. At Eagle, they see the larger picture before them and understand the totality of the dream without being able to express or define it. They feel immersed in love, connected to all, no longer experiencing I, but the power and wonder of spirit. They become the moon and the stars, the fire and the smoke, each other and themselves, no one and everyone. They are the dreamers and the sacred dream. And it is this that I wish for each one of you. God bless you all, and thanks for joining me. Bye for now.